Welcome back to another edition of Camp Chapters. This time we are reading chapters 24 through 29. We are past halfway in the book, and let's really get it rolling, okay? So, chapter 24, let's begin. Fortune cookies. In the second week of March, Margaret got accepted to Stanford, Swarthmore, the University of Connecticut, and Wellesley, the school she really wanted to go to. All the letters came back in 1 week, but the Wellesley letter came last, saying Wellesley was delighted to welcome her to be a part of the class of 1959. When Margaret opened the letter and showed it to her mother, she clutched Margaret in her arms. "You did it," she said. To celebrate, the family went out to dinner at a new Chinese restaurant in Rome, the only one. Amanda's mother left a whole plate of cold fried chicken in the refrigerator, though, just in case it turned out to be as people said, which was that Chinese food was good and filled you up, but you were hungry an hour later. Her dad brought champagne with them to the restaurant to celebrate Margaret's good news. Amanda got the job of taking the little wire off the cork and opening the frosty bottle. As she worked the cork loose, it popped out and flew across the room like a toy. "Hooray!" called Amanda's mother. Amanda had almost never seen her so happy. Amanda's father poured the champagne, some even for Amanda, and then each of them made a toast to Margaret. They got 3 big platters of food to share, and little steaming bowls of rice. As they were starting to eat, their nearest neighbors at Lost Lake came in, the Moss family, who lived on the farm where the dirt road to Lost Lake left the highway. They always saw the Moss family at church, but they didn't know them very well. Roger, the Moss's only son, was a senior at Rome High, too. Everybody said hello, and the Wooods family shared champagne and toasted the Moss family. When their menus came, Amanda's dad told Mr. Moss which dishes had the most beef, because he figured Mr. Moss would want to know that, too. And then they got into a talk about farm prices, while Amanda's mother told Mrs. Moss that Margaret had just been admitted to 4 colleges, 3 in the East and 1 in California, and that was why they were celebrating. "Congratulations, Margaret," Mrs. Moss said. "Margaret will be going back east," Amanda's mother said, "to Wellesley College." Amanda knew the East was where the most culture was, but apparently Mrs. Moss either didn't or didn't care. "If I were 17 and going to college, I'd choose California," she said. "It's so beautiful." Roger wanted to go away to school too, but his father needs him on the farm, so he's going to take some courses on weekends down at Eau Claire State in the fall. After dinner, the grown-ups ordered Chinese tea, and Roger asked Amanda and Margaret if they wanted to play pinball in the next room. Pinball was Amanda's favorite game. She didn't think Margaret had ever liked it much, but this night she seemed to. Roger Moss had brown hair with a wave in it, and an open face. There was quiet and softness in it that somehow reminded Amanda of Lost Lake when it was calm. His face didn't look all boarded up like Margaret's old boyfriend Bob Bostwick's face. Roger congratulated Amanda on good plays, but he didn't put his hand on her head or call her champ. Pinball was like life, Amanda thought, full of traps, where you, the good little silver ball, could go down and never come up again, but also kinds of ways you could slam yourself back into the game. If you pulled a handle quickly enough to slam the levers, they hit the little silver ball and rescued it. Then the game, instead of ending, went on and on, while points flashed for you and bells went off. So it was really good, so that even though you knew that in the end all your little silver balls were going to drop through the holes of the pinball board into nothingness, never to be rescued again, you still triumphed. Amanda had lost her best friend, but maybe in real life she could also get herself back into the game. After they ran out of dimes, they went back and sat down with their families. The waitress brought everybody a thin, crisp, folded cookie with a tiny slip of paper sticking out of the inside. "Your fortune cookies," she said. Amanda didn't know what a fortune cookie was. She picked up her cookie and looked into it. When had the paper gone inside? Before the cookies were baked or after? "You take the fortune out and read it," her father said. "After that, you eat the cookie." Everybody gently pulled their fortunes loose from the cookies, unfolded them, and read them out loud. Her father said, "A clear mind does not fear evil." Margaret said, "Quick, smell the cherry trees in blossom." "But there aren't any around here," she added. Her mother said, "One who lives in fear of thieves has already been robbed." She made the pursed up, disapproving face she always made when something she read was either very obvious or she didn't agree with it. Roger Moss read, "Not every fruit is sweet." Mr. Moss read, "Here is always the best place on earth." Mrs. Moss said, "If you want a garden, plant it." "Perfect. I just started tomato plants and herbs and petunias today. I just hope it doesn't turn too cold." Even for the little greenhouse Bill fixed. Amanda's fortune had been stuck in the cookie, but then it finally came out, even though it got torn in the process. She unfolded it and read, "You will be rich. Wise. Laughter will be your golden treasure." "Ah, money," Mr. Moss said. "Amanda's lucky." And everyone laughed. And then they pushed their chairs back and got up to go. Everybody left their fortunes behind on their tables, except Amanda. She put hers in her pocket to take home, just in case it might be true, and because she didn't really understand it. What was wise laughter? How did you know when you had it? And how old did you have to be before you got it? And did it make you rich in dollars, or is laughter itself the riches? On the way home, she asked where the fortunes came from, and her mother said that the fortunes probably came from a Chinese fortune cookie factory in Chicago, where they worked hard to say things that couldn't mean very much, because they had to apply to everybody. Amanda didn't argue, but she thought that even if the fortunes came from a factory, they could still be true and even inspired. At church, Father Bauer said God used all kinds of means to send people messages and keep them in touch with him. God was sending messages all the time. Amanda figured he could use clouds or trees or books or even a Chinese fortune cookie factory to say things if he wanted. And nobody, not even Amanda's mother, could be really sure he didn't. Chapter 25, The Uninvited. Roger Moss had invited Margaret on a date to a movie. Come Back, Little Sheba. Amanda wanted to go along. She had heard it was a movie about a dog. She knew Margaret wouldn't invite her, but she hoped her mother would force Margaret to take her. But even though Sheba was a dog, the movie was for adults, Amanda's mother said, and Amanda couldn't go. Amanda pointed out that The Adventures of Robinson Crusoe, which also showing down the street in Rome, and it was a kids' movie, and she practically never saw movies. It would be easy for Roger and Margaret to drop her off at the other movie theater in Rome and pick her up afterward. Her mother told her she had not been invited in any shape or form. It was rude to ask to go where you hadn't been invited, and she couldn't even ride along. Amanda had never cared at all that Bob Bostwick never invited her anywhere. Just to look at Bob Bostwick was to be glad not to be going along. She felt differently about Roger. They had played pinball together, and he was her friend. He arrived to pick Margaret up in an old green Ford convertible. When he had visited with their parents a few minutes, he and Margaret started out to his car, and Amanda walked with them. She asked if Roger would like to see her horse. "Sure," Roger said. Amanda called Skipper. He came to the fence and stretched his neck over it, hoping for a treat. Roger walked over to Skipper and patted him. "He's a beautiful pony," Roger said. "You're keeping him up very well." "I curry him every day," Amanda said. She wanted to tell him more about Skipper, but she could see Margaret's eyes shooting poisoned arrows. "If we don't go, we'll be late," Margaret said to Roger sweetly. "Right," Roger said. He ran to open the car door for her, and Margaret smiled. Bob Bostwick, Amanda knew, had opened the car door for Margaret only a few times, when Margaret asked him to, and that one other time when his car was in the Red Cedar River. Amanda thought of mentioning how polite Roger was compared to Bob Bostwick. She opened her mouth. Margaret's eyes were like cannons. The car door closed. "Good night," Amanda said. Margaret didn't answer. Roger walked around to the driver's side of the car. "Good night, Amanda," he said. "Hold down the fort." He backed the car out of the driveway to the road, and he and Margaret drove away. They didn't once look back. All of a sudden, Amanda felt she had lost not only them, but her home and everything magic about it, including Skipper. Skipper was not a best friend. He was just a horse. Lost Lake was a bunch of water. Where Amanda really lived was in the middle of nowhere, where it had been a miracle that just once she could get a friend to visit, and now that was all over. Amanda ducked under the fence in Skipper's pasture. She threw her arms around his neck and cried. She heard footsteps on the gravel of the drive. Amanda? A game of chess, Amanda? It was her father looking for her. Amanda didn't answer. She hid behind Skipper, but her father saw her. He, too, ducked under the fence. Amanda, he said, I thought we were going to play chess. I don't want to, Amanda said. Amanda, her dad said. I don't want to. Or we could fish. I don't want to. Amanda, it's not so bad. It is terrible, Amanda said. Do you want to be alone? I am alone, Amanda said. Her father turned away. Amanda grabbed his hand. Talk to me, Amanda said. Talk to me. You never talk to me. Nobody ever talks to me. And suffering is not good for the soul. That's a lie. Amanda squeezed her father's fingers and glared at him. He stood, letting her twist his fingers, but saying nothing. Amanda, through her anger, saw the sadness in his face. Maybe suffering isn't good for the soul, but it is life, he said. He talked almost hoarsely, like a person not used to talking, as if he hadn't heard his own voice for years. Mostly everybody is alone. We're just lucky when we're not. Margaret and Roger, they also probably feel alone most of the time. Now tonight, they're just hoping they'll make one world out of two and not be alone. They don't know if they can do it. That's why they need to be alone together, to find out. Amanda sniffed noisily. She wished she had a Kleenex. Her father reached into his pocket. He held out his handkerchief. Someone is going to want to be with you too, Amanda, her father said. Someone is going to want to see you and hope to make one world with you. When you're older, it will happen to you. It will. Amanda, you're going to be a teenager. The hardest part is waiting. Waiting and waiting for someone to see you in a special way. The only way to get through it is to have faith that it will happen. Her father pulled his fingers free and held hers. In the meantime, be like Mrs. Moss. Plant a garden. Amanda pulled away. That's so stupid. I can't make a garden here. Nobody can make a garden here. There's too much shade. I'm talking about a garden inside you. There's no garden inside me. There's desert inside me, Amanda said furiously. There's a garden too, her father said. Amanda did not turn her head. Amanda's father touched her hair. His hand felt heavy and strange. They hardly ever touched. There's a garden inside you already, Amanda, her father said. I can't see it now, but I have seen it. Amanda heard her father go back into the house and her mother's voice asking, Where's Amanda? Taking care of Skipper. Amanda stayed with Skipper for a long time. She got the curry comb from his tack room and curried him, even though it was dark and she couldn't see where she was brushing. She braided his mane very messily, just so she could unbraid it and brush it again. She scratched him behind the ears. She filled her hands with oats, feeling his warm nose and his warmer breath in her palms, and then his big warm tongue licking up every last one. She started to feel real again, a little bit alive inside herself. Wow, that was deep. Chapter 26, Persuasion. Saturday morning, Amanda woke up feeling weak and light, but clear, like a person who has come through an illness. Margaret was still sleeping with a peaceful smile on her face. Amanda said good morning to her mother, who was picking up the living room, and went on outside looking for her dad. It was a warm day for April. He was down on the beach looking at pieces of the dock and the diving board he had piled up there, ready to be set out in the water again. Good morning, little one, he said. Can we talk more, Amanda asked. All right, he said, let's go for a walk. They walked along the shore of the lake, their feet crunching over gravel and thin patches of snow. They sat down on some rocks in the sun. The ice on the lake was breaking up. Amanda looked across bobbing gray chunks of it toward the island. I had a friend, she said. It was so hard, but I worked, and I got a friend. I want my friend back. I want Pam to study with me again, but she'll never do it unless you help me. What do you want me to do? Her father said. You said Pam could study with me, but her mom thinks you don't like her. If you talk to Pam's mother, you can tell her that you like Pam, so she'll really know it." Her father's face looked as bored-like as Bob Bostwick's. "I can't do that." "Why not?" Amanda said. "Young lady, I'm your father, and I don't have to give you reasons," her father said. "You're my father, and you ought to give me reasons. You said you would talk to me, and you aren't." Her father said nothing. "I do not have one single friend in the world," Amanda said. Her father shifted his feet. Pebbles skittered across the old snow. "The reason," he began. He ground more pebbles under his boot heel. "It would be very, very embarrassing for me." They parked in front of Pam's house. In the yard, Max and Marky were building a snowman with bits of unmelted April snow. They ran up to Amanda and her dad. "Look at this, look at its nose," they said. The snowman was small because they didn't have much snow to work with, but they were pushing a big carrot into its face, and they had 2 apples for his eyes. "It's a great face," Amanda said. You couldn't actually say it was a great snowman, but a great face it was. You should tell little kids what they did was great, whenever you could, she knew. It was something she had learned from Pam. They went up to the house, and Amanda knocked. Her father had called ahead, so they knew Pam wasn't there. She was at her music lesson, but Amanda thought that it didn't matter. It was better to talk to just Mrs. Collins. For her dad, 2 people could be more of an embarrassment. Mrs. Collins opened the door and invited them in. She asked them to sit down in the living room, and then she offered Amanda's father coffee, but he said no. They were just going to stay a minute. And then he sat, turning the brim of his fancy city hat around and around in his hands. Mrs. Collins looked at him, but she didn't say a word. "I just want to say," Amanda's father said, that I'm very sorry something has come between Pam and Amanda. I think Pam is a marvelous girl. She is a wonderful friend for Amanda, and, you see, if it were up to me, Amanda would be here in a minute, as often as you would care to have her. She could learn so much from your family. It's just that Amanda's mother doesn't see it that way, and she is the one that makes the decisions about the children. I don't know why, really. Some of her decisions would not be my decisions, but all families are like that. And she is the one that generally makes the home decisions, and I haven't. Mrs. Collins' posture had softened, but her face had not changed. But anyhow, the way things are is a tremendous loss to Amanda, and I feel that, I know that, and seeing our girl's happiness has been a great pleasure to me too. We live out so far, and Amanda has been very lonely at times, I think. I'd like to invite you and your husband, if he's home, to come by the hotel one afternoon, and bring your boys too. We've got a very good banana cream pie, and we could all have a visit. I would like Pam to feel comfortable with us again. Amanda wants to be with her. I miss her too." "Whatever Pam wants," Mrs. Collins said. "I guess, however things are, they are different from the way I thought." The next week, all the Collinses but Pam's dad came to the hotel, and everybody had Charlie's banana cream pie. It might have been awkward, though, except for Max and Marky's excitement. The twins ran around looking at all the stuff in the Loggers Inn and kept running back to the table to say what they had seen. They wanted to know if they could come again. Amanda's dad said that whenever Pam wanted to invite them, he would be happy to have them. Pam said to her mother, "Do you want to see the room?" And everybody went upstairs. Her dad unlocked the door to room 17, and Mrs. Collins looked in. "It looks like a good place to study and to dream," she said. "It is," Pam said. "It really is." And then Amanda knew everything was truly going to be all right. Chapter 27, Pomp and Circumstance. 5th grade turned out to be the best year in school that Amanda had ever had. The class made a theater, and they put on plays about things that happened in families. Other kids liked the funny ideas that Amanda invented for the plays. In science, they planted bean plants in tin cans and shined different colored lights on them, and then measured the plants to see which color light grew plants the fastest. For social studies, they visited the Rome newspaper office and got to see the very first issues of the Rome paper. As she looked at them, Amanda had almost felt that she was touching another time. At the end of the year, her father invited the whole class to the hotel for ice cream and explained to everyone lots about the history of Wisconsin and the photos on the wall. Everybody liked Amanda's dad. Afterward, Mary Jane Stoltenberg thanked Amanda personally for getting her dad to invite them all to the hotel. Bob Larson wanted to know if Amanda got to go into the hotel and order ice cream free anytime she wanted. Amanda said she could, and she didn't mind when everybody died of envy. When spring came, sometimes instead of going to the hotel, she and Pam went to Pam's house and other girls' houses after school. Some Saturdays, Amanda came into town with her dad and went roller skating with Pam. For the first time in years, the Rome Hotel was filled for June, so Amanda and Pam had to take their things out of room 17. Her father said that when fall came and the number of travelers went down, they could use the room again, as long as Amanda kept getting hundreds on her arithmetic. For the first time ever, Amanda was sad about the prospect of school letting out. On the last day, Miss Devereux came into their room, not showing any traces of werewolf, and looking as if she had taken a few smiles from Miss Harmon's supply. Miss Devereux told the class that Miss Harmon wanted to keep working with them and would be their 6th grade teacher in the fall. Amanda was overjoyed. After Miss Devereux left, Miss Harmon had little private conversations with each student. She told Amanda that she had shown the most improvement of anybody. When she handed Amanda her report card, Miss Harmon gave her a hug and a kiss and said she was proud of her. Outside, Amanda and Pam opened their report cards together. Pam had straight A's. Amanda had got straight A's except for a B in music and an A+ in arithmetic. When she showed it to her father, he said, "Good work, little one." When they got home, her mother couldn't believe Amanda's grades or Miss Harmon's note on the report card that Amanda has been an exceptional student and is a delight to know. "Your teacher took a liking to you," Amanda's mother said, sounding as if she knew everything about it down to the last detail and had arranged it all herself. Somehow, she made it sound as if Amanda had no part in her own success. "I worked," Amanda said. "It isn't just that she liked me. I worked." Her mother smiled, half fondly, half knowingly, and started to put Amanda's report card into her study desk, where she kept all the others. Amanda held out her hand. "I want it," she said. "It's mine, and I want to keep it." Her mother handed the report card to her. Amanda took it into her and Margaret's room and put it in the side pocket of her 5-year diary. Then she dusted the diary. The next day, Amanda overheard her mother talking on the phone to someone and saying, "Amanda is turning out to be a very good student, outstanding at arithmetic," which is the strangest thing. Margaret graduated as valedictorian of the class of 1955 and led the graduation process. Gary Walber, the editor of the paper, walked with her up the aisle of the gymnasium of Rome High. He was salutatorian, but he looked happy, not as if his poor, vulnerable ego was crushed by being second to a girl. For a change, Margaret really looked like her photograph, with the "I am beautiful and I am going to be a doctor" expression on her face. The music, Pomp and Circumstance, sounded sad and stately. Hearing it, Amanda realized for the first time that one day, not too far off, Margaret would be leaving home. After the ceremony, though, the summer of '55 seemed not so much different from any other summer. Margaret went back to work at the hospital. Amanda came into town with her dad some days, even though it wasn't school time. She saw Pam, and they took the twins for picnics in the park. One day, Pam told her good news. In August, her family was going to spend a month canoeing, paddling north on lake after lake into Minnesota and all the way to Canada. They were going to see a lot. Besides that, Pam would have a good chance to get to know her father. "I wish you could go with us," Pam said. "I would love to go," Amanda said. But they both knew, without asking, that she wouldn't be allowed. Learning American. Dear Amanda, you didn't answer my last letter. Maybe it was lost in postal strike. Probably, if you heard speak of riot, you also heard of this. I will tell again what was in that letter. Excuse me that I don't understand everything you write. I see that you kindly work very hard to write very simple English for me, but I still don't understand it. In school, I am very good in English. I don't understand why I don't understand your English. My father says maybe it is the American that I don't understand. I do not know what is circulate. I looked in my dictionary. Still, I do not know. I hope I do it, if you think it is a good thing. I do not know what is ha-ha. I only hope you were safe on New Year's Eve riot. We have not smelt often. They come from the North Sea, Osmeride, and I do not know of the kind tender fire. Probably it, too, is fishy. I don't understand Walking Dead real. My dictionary is English, not American. Maybe it is not good for American. I do not understand dig. In my English class, we had a lesson called Around Home, where I learned digging beets in the garden. But I don't understand digging the beets. I believe Generation Beets should comb the hair and bathe themselves. In France, the philosophers bathe themselves, just like everyone else. Maybe more. In case maybe you thought that when I become one, I shall not do it. Although I don't understand much of your letter, I have good news. Right now, my family, we are packing for California. I am going to study American there during 2 months. In August, we will tour the United States. I have shown your letters to my parents. They don't understand either, but they think you must be very interesting. They want to meet you. We will be in your Lost Lake in August. That will be even better than a bit of telephone. I will be so happy to forget dictionaries and see your beautiful face. Sincerely, Antoine. Dear Antoine, do not come to Wisconsin. Minnesota is much safer and just as nice. Wisconsin can be very dangerous. The roads are bad, there are bears, Lost Lake is very lost. You could never find it without a guide. And there are no guides, and nobody speaks French. People are not used to strange languages, and I do not know how they will react. If you ever did find Lost Lake, I would be disappointed. You may not think so, but believe me, you would be. Please, for your own sake, don't try. Let's keep writing to each other. Very, very, very sorry. Sincerely, Amanda. Chapter 29, Raspberry Pie. In July, Roger's mother invited Margaret to a Sunday noon dinner at the Moss's house. She went right after morning church. Amanda was in bed reading when Margaret returned, kicking off her shoes and flopping down on their bed with a sigh. Her whole back landed on Amanda's side, where Margaret had no right to put it. And Amanda wanted to point that out, but she couldn't. There was a strange shimmering atmosphere around her sister, like fireflies dancing, that kept Amanda from opening her mouth. They are nice, you know that? Really nice. Roger's folks? Amanda said. Right, Roger's folks. They just make you feel so good, and he does too. Margaret was silent for a minute, and Amanda didn't say anything. They're not like us, Margaret confided, as if she was telling an enormous secret. What do you mean? Amanda asked. She stretched out her legs a little, but was careful not to hit Margaret in the side. They're just so nice, Margaret said. She smiled. They're like raspberry pie. We had the best dinner, chicken and dumplings with gravy, and fresh green beans from their garden, and raspberry pie. But the main thing is, when they talk to you, you don't feel like they're comparing you with everyone else they've ever met. They don't ask what your plans are. You don't have to say, oh, Mr. Moss, I'm a very serious person. My plan is this, my plan is that. We talked about birds a lot, which ones they see around. And Mrs. Moss, made a really great pie. But she doesn't serve it like Mother. She didn't have a silver pie cutter and a great pie announcement. The last time Mother made raspberry pie, don't you remember the great pie announcement? Amanda didn't. Margaret sat up as if she were holding the silver pie cutter in her hand. This raspberry pie is from a French recipe, and I hope you are able to appreciate it. And if you don't try it, George, I will be very upset. But I don't take too But don't take too big a piece because it's very rich. And you know you've been putting on weight lately. And you too, Margaret, you need to be careful. Amanda tried to remember the great pie announcement. The last time her mother had made a raspberry pie, it was with wild raspberries that Amanda had picked. What she remembered was sitting at the table thinking, wild berries are the best, 1,000,000 times better than tame berries. I picked those berries, that's why this pie is so good. Maybe when the great pie announcement came, she hadn't been listening. Anyhow, Margaret continued, Mrs. Moss brought out her pie, all golden and rounded up over the pie plate, with little bits of juice that had bubbled out on the crust. And she didn't say, this is raspberry pie, because any fool could smell that it was raspberry pie. She just said, Margaret, would you like some pie? And serve me, and then Roger, and Mr. Moss, and herself, the size piece everybody wanted. But the thing is, you could tell that if you said you didn't want any at all, that would be fine. And if you wanted 3 pieces, that would be fine. And if you said you hated raspberry pie, that would be fine too, because life is big. Amanda felt uncomfortable. Mother's pie is good too, she said. Yes, it is, but really, the Mosses are great. You know what? They are better people than we are, and even if they never heard of Wellesley. Even if they never serve the water in stem glasses on Sunday, and even if they have farmer tans that end at their shirt sleeves. Except for Roger. He doesn't have a farmer's tan, Margaret added, and then she blushed. Better people, Amanda was feeling very upset. Maybe not better, maybe just happier. The thing is, our mother is really like the Lone Ranger. Our mother? Like the Lone Ranger? Amanda was astounded. Yes, she's concerned about the world all the time. She wants to gallop in and rescue people, but she doesn't want to stay around them. She doesn't really like people. She just wants to save them. Was it true? If you wanted to save people, didn't that mean you cared about them? It was just that their mother wanted people to be a certain way, like the people who were supposed to build houses on Lost Lake and appreciate beauty, but never came. Mother likes a certain kind of people a lot, Amanda protested. But there aren't many of them, Margaret said. I'm not really sure there are any. For her, but for me, Margaret smiled, he is just like raspberry pie. Amanda couldn't follow Margaret's crazy mind at all. The Lone Ranger? Amanda asked. No, Margaret said, glaring at her. Roger is just pure raspberry pie. She glared at Amanda for a minute more, and then she smiled. Anyway, she said, I got a piece for you if you want it. It's in a bag on the chair. It got kind of mushed up, but I brought you a plate and a spoon. And that is chapter 29. So, I want to thank you for reading along with us, and I want to thank you for listening to all these installments. Be safe, be awesome. Thanks again.